recruitment. There are just a couple of things that I want to get us started on, but the first thing I want to say is thank you for all of you participating in the program today. I hope you know by some of the other communications that have been sent out to you earlier just how important these pre-webinar series are. It's very much a part of this PLS program, and we're going to even find ways to encourage you to make sure that you're a part of every one of them and have at least viewed every one of them. So saying that, I'm going to go ahead and get forward and just do a couple of little housekeeping tips and then introduce our PLS committee and the staff, and then I'm going to hand this over to our President-elect, Brad Thurman. So let's get started. Many of you have already been a part of the webinars that we have had in the past, so this may be very familiar to you, but I just want to make sure that you're familiar with the control panels and how this works. You'll see, I'm going to try to limit my mouse control here because we're recording this, but you will see pretty much what I have on the screen here is what you'll have on your screen. If you want to have your full screen and ask a question, you can use this little orange arrow right here to collapse it and to expand it and to see who's actually on the webinar as well. One of the things that we're going to be doing is answering questions if we can, and we have some time throughout the webinar. There's a lot of material to cover, but if you have a specific question and you don't write it in the question box right here, you can raise your hand. Mary Cruz and I are looking at raised hands and questions in the box and to be able to answer and address any specific question that is not maybe a part of the webinar or related to something that we're talking about. If you raise your hand, we're going to take that as a clue to unmute you, and then at that point we'll say, well, John Smith has his hand raised. John, do you have a question? You'll be unmuted, and then we'll ask you to go ahead and ask your question. One thing to pay attention to, though, if that is the case, if you have your telephone and your computer microphone set to speak, we ask that you only use one of them, so that will prevent any type of echo. That said, I want you to know that we'll be recording this, so we are recording this. This is going to be saved in the PLS 2013 Community Library, and along with the other two webinars that we'll have as a part of this series. And then something new this year, because this is such an important set of webinars and a part of the PLS program overall, we want to make sure that you see every single one of these. So what we're doing is we're going to offer up a little prize for every single one of those who have shown and demonstrated that they've participated or have viewed the webinars. So what we want you to do is throughout the presentation, there's going to be one slide that has a little Ronnie in it. And what that little Ronnie is, it's actually a little picture of our CEO, Ron Worth, as a little boy somewhere mixed up in the slides. So at the end of the entire webinar series, the one today, in February, and in March, at the end of every one of the all of those, if you can show us where you found the little Ronnie, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to send you a fun little prize. So just something to show you that this really is important, and we hope you're paying attention to all of these. So anyway, at this point, I want to go ahead and introduce you to the PLS committee and the staff who is working with them. Our chair this year is Andrew Weinberg, Regional Director of Business Development, Working Buildings. Dawn Greco, she is not on this call today, but she is our PLS incoming chair. Our past chair is Nola Nasser-Gertner. She is with M3 Consulting. And our board representation is Brad Thurman, our president-elect, and Holly Bolton, our chapter delegate. The staff that will be working with you is myself, Tina Myers, Mary Cruz, our Director of Chapter Services, and Dan Riley, who is our Meeting and Events Manager. That said, Brad, I'm going to hand this over to you, and you can kick this off.
Great. Thanks, Tina.
Sure.
First, welcome, everyone. I'd like to say thanks to everybody for serving your chapters and this organization as chapter presidents. We know it's a really big commitment, and as an organization, we simply cannot survive without members like you that are willing to take leadership positions. So starting off, before we say anything else, thank you for doing this. I've actually been in your shoes as a chapter president. I know the anticipation and the anxiety that comes with the role. I'm actually kind of going through the same emotions right now as national president-elect. And that's why PLS is such a great program. When I got to go to my PLS many moons ago, I was amazed that an organization would create a program that actually taught volunteer leaders how to lead. I've come across very few organizations that do that, and even fewer that have the quality of the program that we have. PLS is a very critical part of SMPS's continued success. And it's why the committee that Tina just showed you has been working so hard to create a really great user experience for each and every one of you. We hope the PLS not only gives you the information, the skills that you need to successfully lead your chapter, but you'll develop a bond with the organization staff and board, and especially with your fellow presidents. That's very important. Develop a bond with your fellow presidents that will endure long after your term is ended. You'll understand that more as you go along and as we go through PLS. So I encourage all of you to soak it up, enjoy the experience, learn, ask questions, and just really dive into the experience. And that's really all I need to say to get going. Again, thank you. With that, I'm going to turn you over to the very capable hands of Andrew Weinberg. Andrew is the chair for the PLS and an all-around SMPS junkie and an all-around good guy. Andrew?
Yeah, I've actually been called the SMPS poster child. So I want to say hello to everyone and also welcome you to the first pre-PLS webinar. I kind of see this as the kickoff of the PLS season. And so I'm really excited, and I hope you are too. I'm thrilled and honored to be your PLS committee chair this year. I want to tell you that our committee has been working very hard throughout the year, meeting regularly, talking about planning your sessions, your workshops, your roundtable discussions, etc. Tons of activities going on during PLS, not to mention networking and downtime activities as well, and of course equally important. We have quality guest speakers and great content to give you the tools that you'll need to have an outstanding year as president. Our efforts will ensure that you have the best and most productive and enjoyable experience possible. And again, we're very excited. I say the word excited a lot because I am. And I look forward to meeting you all in April. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Holly. I'd like to introduce Holly. Holly Bolton, most of you know, is on our board of directors at the national level as chapter delegate. And she's also director of marketing for CE Solutions. And Holly's going to talk about strategic planning. Take it away, Holly.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited. Just like Andrew's excited, I'm also very excited to be talking with you all today. I know that I've met several of you at conferences and chapter events, and probably some strategic planning sessions or having discussions with you, with your board about strategic planning. So really excited to talk with you about this topic this year. We've seen a lot of activity on strategic planning in the past several months with chapters, kind of an increase in the activity. SMPS conducted a survey before PLS last year, and over half the chapters said that they hadn't really conducted a true strategic planning meeting session, or if they did, it wasn't all that productive. So since then, we've just seen a real interest in strategic planning sessions in this whole topic. So this slide is kind of a fun slide. It talks about why plan. And as leaders, I know that you all understand the value of having a good plan and working that plan. I just love Alice in Wonderland and this crazy Cheshire cat and this quote. A little bit confusing, but it's basically, if you don't know where you're going, you don't know where to go, right? So really illustrates the importance of a good plan. So additional reasons why you want to plan. As I said, several of you have been involved in planning sessions, or probably in your company you might be involved in the strategic planning process, or if you've studied for the CPSM, you know a lot about strategic planning. But what are the different reasons why we plan? Well, it's to find new ideas to achieve goals, set goals, and then come up with innovative ways to achieve them. Providing continuity for new leaders. It's a dynamic organization, SMPS, where leadership changes year to year, sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot. So a good plan provides some good continuity for your new volunteers that you have coming in and new roles. As Brad said, we're all busy. This is a volunteer role that you're doing, so your resources are limited. Time is precious, so a good plan helps you do things efficiently and effectively, anticipating things that might be coming up and planning for them. And then also, the strategic planning process is a great way to build consensus and bring your group together, your board that you'll be working with, on some common goals that you can achieve. So we're talking about kind of the who, what, when, where, why, and how. We started kind of not in that order. It started with why. But now we want to talk about what exactly is a strategic plan. And just like Alice could have used a good roadmap when she was going down her trail, a strategic plan is a roadmap that leads an organization from where it is now to where it would like to be. And when we think about a strategic plan, it's different than kind of your action plans or your annual plan that is a year out, but it's typically 3 to 5 years out, so it's looking more long-term at your goals. And typically a strategic plan will include some language about the vision. So what is that place you'd like to be? And I'll talk about this a little bit more later on, but when it comes to the SMPS vision, we have some different topics to address there. It also includes goals that are SMART, and so we'll talk about that analogy here after a while. And then your action plan. So what are those strategies and tactics that are going to help you achieve those goals? So we've talked about what a strategic plan is and why it's important to have one, but how do you get there? We've got some pictures of some SMPS leaders in the planning process here. So it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to look like this on the, on the next slide. You know, one thing that Brad says a lot that I love is that simplicity is beautiful. Simple is beautiful. Keep things simple. So as I said earlier, we're all busy. We all have busy careers and lives. So when you think about the strategic planning process, it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be complicated. So what we're going to talk about today are just kind of some tips and ideas on how to make it easier. And I'm really thrilled that we have something happening at SMPS that is going to help chapters go through their strategic planning process in an easier way. And is Stacey on the line? I would like to introduce Stacey to discuss this.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Stacey.
This is Stacey Stout. I am just as excited as Holly and Andrew, I should say. I was approached to prepare this task force for meeting the deadline of being prepared and ready for your PLS meeting in April. So we are really underway and making this happen. So the whole point of this task force is to create and provide a tool for you to use to get this planning process moving. What's been happening in the past is chapters will reach out to Mary or Tina asking for resources to get things going, and so they kind of pull parts and pieces, refer people to other chapters to talk about what they've done in the past, and then pull those together. So what this effort really represents is to formalize that and create a dynamic toolkit that people can pull from to outline their program and create a successful program. So what's happening is we are creating a very thorough outline, and what it will do is give you a step-by-step process of how to begin the strategic planning effort, what those tools could be that you would use, and the actual tools that you can use within the process. So it is going to be a comprehensive toolkit that you will be able to take, and whether you have never done a strategic planning process in the past, or if you are old pros at it and do it all the time, we hope that you find something new that you might be able to use to implement in your current processes. So we're excited to launch this and have it ready for you at PLS so that you can get with your strategic planning efforts and get things moving.
Thank you, Stacey. it's great to have Stacey leading up this task force of folks that are going to create this toolkit for you guys to use, and it'll really be helpful. We know that each chapter is unique, so it'll be something that's customizable that is applicable to what you have. So with that in mind, the fact that we have this toolkit that's going to be available for you at PLS, I'm going to keep the strategic planning conversation pretty high level because the toolkit will go into some more details, but just really give you kind of a preview of what are the main steps of the strategic planning process. And so it includes research and information gathering, collective decisions, implementation, and evaluation, and my favorite part, celebration. So I'm going to talk about each of these in detail for you. And they can be called different things, but these are kind of describing the different steps in the process. So when it comes to research and information gathering, the strategic planning process begins long before you meet at the venue and start your planning session that day. But it really, to make the process easier and to make sure that it meets the needs of your membership, the first step is the research and information gathering stage. And so there's some bullets here on different ways that you can get information that will help guide you in the decisions that you make for the goals that you want to set. One important thing to do is to talk to your fellow chapter leaders about what they're seeing for their role, what ideas they have, sharing what your vision is with them on how things should go, and just kind of having those conversations ahead of time so that you kind of have a good idea of what are the areas of priorities. And then also conducting focus groups, surveys. This is a great way to get the voice of your membership. You want to make sure that when you're creating a plan for your chapter that it's not just based on the opinions and the thoughts of the people that are in that room that are on the board, but that it's really indicative of what your membership and prospective members need and want as well. So Columbus has a great focus group program. A lot of chapters do that. Chapters do electronic surveys, and the SMPS office can help with sending those out. New York had a one-on-one interview kind of process. So there's lots of ways that your chapters have done this, but just a way to get the voice from your members. And then getting ideas from other chapters, speaking of other chapters, from smps.org. There's forums for discussion there where you can get ideas. Stacey mentioned that we have samples of what other chapters have done for their strategic plans, and those are in my SMPS as well. Referring to the Striving for Excellence criteria, this is another exciting thing. This year we've revised the Striving for Excellence criteria so that it really it's updated and really reflects the thoughts and things that were shared in a survey of chapter leaders and past jurors, and just kind of, we really took a hard look at the Striving for Excellence criteria, and so that's new and revised for you all. A lot of chapters use the Striving for Excellence criteria to help guide their strategic planning process because it's so comprehensive, because it's not just about programs, it's about membership, communication, and leadership. Referring to SMPS's overall strategic plan and what we're working on as an organization as a whole can shed some light on things that your chapter can do that's kind of in line with that. And then also evaluating strengths and areas of improvement. So kind of like at our firms, we might call it a SWOT analysis, where it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So those are some different ways to research, just find out the lay of the land to help you for the next step, which is, drum roll please. Oh, well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm just mixing it up to surprise you guys. Really quickly, I wanted to talk about the mission and the vision. I talked on the previous slide about the strategic plan that SMPS has. And as chapter leaders, I know that you know this mission, advocate for, educate, and connect leaders in the building industry. All chapters should share this mission. Don't feel like you have to. In fact, we would prefer that you have the actual SMPS mission as your mission statement for your chapter. You don't need to write a mission statement for your chapter because all chapters follow the common mission of SMPS. The vision statement, however, if you want to, you can customize a vision statement for your chapter. And the vision this is the SMPS overall vision. Some chapters have localized this and just make sure it's in line. But what I would tell you when it comes to the vision is don't feel like you have to put a whole bunch of time and resources into creating the perfect vision statement. Rather focus on your goals and kind of your action plans, and if a vision makes sense for your chapter, a vision statement, then that's perfectly fine. But don't feel like you have to spend a lot of time creating a fabulous vision statement, because it should be in line with what we have as an organization as well. So now we can jump ahead to the next section of collective decisions. So you've done your research, you've kind of looked at the lay of the land. Now it's time to actually have your planning session and set those goals, create those action plans. When it comes to setting goals, you can see the SMART analogy over here on the sides, goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Just looking at those criteria and saying, are our goals all of these things? And making sure that you have champions. So who's going to kind of see this through? Kind of think about it, you know, so that you can have an actionable plan. To have a person that's kind of in charge of that really helps so that the plan moves forward, doesn't just kind of sit on the shelf, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, where did we go with that goal? So the example below talks about increasing membership by 10% by 2016. So it's just an example, but it has a measurable number in there. It has a date, so it's time-bound. So that's really important. So whenever you're thinking about the how and you're thinking about the SMART goals, there's some questions that you can ask yourself, and this kind of relates to the SMART analogy. But are the goals going to meet the majority of the members, like I talked about earlier with surveys, focus groups, things like that? Do you have funds and resources to accomplish those goals? Will we be able to successfully implement this plan? You want to make sure you're setting yourself up for success. Will the plan produce the desired results? So are the strategies and tactics that you have, are they going to help you meet your goals? And is it reasonable in terms of time? So these are just all questions to ask just to make sure that it's a realistic, SMART plan. Another thing, the next thing I want to talk about is just real quickly about staying focused during your planning session, because sometimes there's a tendency for us to want to solve problems when we're together and talk specifics. So a true strategic planning session is focused, but it's more high level of setting goals. Like if you start talking about specifics on programs, like if you're going to have chicken or fish, and where you're going to, the venue that you're going to have your program in, those are all important discussions, but they're really not appropriate for the strategic planning session. So you can kind of talk bigger picture about topics that you want to provide and things like that, but just try not to get too detailed. And it's also not a role transition meeting. So if you have a new communications chair and the outgoing communications chair, this is not the time for them to talk about what they're going to be doing in their role. That can be discussed at a different time. So just kind of some words of caution there. So then we get into the fun part of implementation, and this is what you've created your plan, you have your goals and your strategies and tactics and people that are champions of them. Now it's time to implement. And so some kind of keys to implementation is, you know, you set your SMART goals, so that definitely helps, but doing things like sharing your strategic plan with your chapter is really helpful to let everyone know what's going on and maybe how they can contribute. Also, including strategic goals and discussions at your board meetings and just making sure that you're making progress. I know some chapters have kind of a mid-year re-review where they have a longer board meeting and they dive into their plan a little bit more. So those are just some ideas to have frequent follow-up and accountability on the goals that you've set. So actually, this is the fun part, the celebration and evaluation. So when you're continually reviewing your plans, and when you get that 10% membership increase, update the plan, celebrate it, have fun with it, and update it. It's a living document. Another thing to do is, you know, a few months in, you may realize, okay, maybe this plan, something's changed and this particular goal or the strategy isn't reasonable, so let's update it. What do we need to change? So just making sure that you're continually kind of charting your path. is a good thing to do. So, so we've kind of gone through the 4 steps, and I want to go into the who and when and where. But do we have any questions first? Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, Holly, this is Mary. I don't see any hand raised or questions at this time, so we're good to go.
All right, cool. And that allowed me to get a little drink of water, which is great. Okay. So who needs to be there when you have your planning session? Incoming board and committee chairs, the outgoing board provides great insight, and a facilitator. And when it comes to a facilitator, this is a really great thing, because as incoming presidents, you want to really be a participant in this planning session. You don't want to have to worry as much about keeping everybody on track and kind of facilitating and taking notes and things like that. So a facilitator is really great, so you can focus on being with your group and helping with that. But also the facilitator will provide some guidance on structure, focus. They can provide some feedback and an impartial perspective on things. Sometimes you're too close to something, so that can help, and experience and expertise. And so when you think about potential facilitators, people that you could reach out to facilitate your meeting, reach out to your SMPS fellows. This is a great resource for you, and there's some exciting things happening with the Fellows Committee this year to be resources for you. So definitely take advantage of them. SMPS staff and SMPS board, I know, have been traveling coast to coast to help facilitate and be a resource for strategic planning sessions. Past chapter presidents can provide value, and also experienced facilitators outside of your leadership group.
Holly, this is Tina. Can I just add one more item in here?
Definitely.
Just regarding the fellows, Holly mentioned that there's a lot of exciting things happening with the fellows, and our fellows delegate this year is Carla Thompson, who is championing a group called the Fellows Champions, working with our chapters. You'll learn a whole lot more about this at PLS while you're here in April, and they'll give you many more details on how they can help you out, who you can reach out to, and we'll have just a lot of great detail. So I just want to make sure that if you're thinking about the fellows in a way to support you, we'll definitely have much more information for you when you're here in Alexandria.
Awesome. Thanks, Tina.
Holly, well, this is Mary. I'm sorry to interrupt. There is one question from Kimberly Johnson. She just asked, when did they did a comprehensive strategic plan about 2 years ago, and how often do you recommend them revising that plan?
I think it kind of depends on where they are in the plan, and kind of what the needs are of the chapter, how things have changed. Even if you have an existing strategic planning or strategic plan that you're working from, you can still have a strategic planning session where you look at it and revise it and kind of change it. So I think it kind of depends on the state of the plan and the state of the chapter. But do any of the other panelists on the call, Mary or Tina, or anybody have any other recommendations?
The one thing I was going to say, this is Mary, is just, really membership changes so often. We'd be surprised how often, we send out those demographic reports each month, but you'd be surprised how often the demographics of your membership change and what their needs are. So really assessing those statistics, and we can certainly always help you with that, making sure that, if your membership are primarily senior members or mid-level, or if you have a good mix, and what are their specifics, and really surveying your membership and getting back the feedback and then comparing it to what you have in your plan, your existing plan, and see if those two things line up. And if they don't, it might be worth considering a little bit of change there.
Sure, and this is Tina. Just another thing to add to the plan is that I think if you look at it in a couple of years, and as a team you're going through it, is it working for you? Are there things that you have put together in your plan that you thought you were going to be able to manage and to achieve? If it's not working for you, evaluate that. Talk about it. Why is it not working? Does it still make sense? And especially with just what Mary said, is it still in line with who your chapter represents right now? So it's definitely a good idea to evaluate it, but you do need to give it time to make things happen, because all the things in a really good strategic plan, as Holly has been indicating, it takes time. And you have short-term and you have long-term, but you do need to have it in front of you constantly, but make sure that it's still working for you, that it still makes sense for who you are and for the type of support that you have in the volunteer leadership structure. So those are all things you need to keep in consideration when you're looking at your plan again.
Awesome. Great question, Kimberly. Okay, so when we talked about when you typically would have a planning session, as you guys will experience, and I can't wait to witness it after PLS, it's a great experience. You'll have a lot of enthusiasm and ideas and a great network that you'll be able to collaborate with throughout the year. And so soon after PLS is good because you can kind of channel that and spread that excitement with the rest of your board and start to share those ideas and thoughts. The summertime is a good time as well because a lot of chapters sometimes their programming is a little lighter on during the summer months, so that works. In terms of length of session, it's kind of like we've been talking about throughout the webinar, that it depends on some of the needs of your chapter. So if you're working from an existing plan, you might not need as robust of a day. Some folks have done a full day strategic planning. Some folks have done it in 3 hours or so. So it just kind of depends. But that's kind of the range. So we can kind of help you when you're trying to figure that out when you're trying to plan your session. Then when it comes to the where, so not in a bar, but but definitely if you want to go later, if you're into that kind of thing, you can do that. But when you think about where you want to have it, having it in a crowded restaurant at a big table is sometimes it's distracting. And if you're like me, something shiny moves, and then you're like, wait, where were we? So so having it somewhere that you can really focus. A board member's conference room, there's a lot of really cool conference rooms that work really well. Sometimes there's distractions there too, though. If that board member, if it's in their office and they're busy, but just choose your venue wisely. There's some chapters, and you guys who've been to these sessions that are on the call can attest. I mean, people have had planning sessions in a board member's home, and it's really cool, because you get to kind of develop your relationship and see where they live, and it's kind of a cool thing. Maybe have a cookout on the back deck afterwards, or a private conference room in a venue. So maybe it is at a restaurant, but they have a really cool conference room that you can use. But just a place you can stick things up on the wall, Post-its, just a place that's conducive to creativity and teamwork. So that's kind of the physical where. So the next slide I'm going to talk about not emotionally, but where in terms of state of mind. And that is to have it somewhere that is in an inclusive environment. So what I mean by that is you can see this this strange drawing that's up here. And this is actually something that I drew during our SMPS board planning session because there were goats on site where we were having our meeting, and so I drew a little goat. And during our meeting we did an exercise with Brent Darnell, who it's an improv tactic called yes and it's about building on ideas instead of saying yeah but. So you can kind of see what I mean there. Just making sure that you're not dismissing ideas, because that tends to damper enthusiasm. So making sure that everyone's staying on track is important, but just making sure that you don't fall into that kind of, yeah, we tried that, but it didn't work. Oh, we tried that 2 years ago, and it didn't. That'll never work. Those types of ideas. It's like, well, why didn't it work? Have things changed? Let's, build on these ideas and see how we can move them forward. So it helps to have a flip chart up, though, so that maybe if something isn't as practical or pragmatic at this time, you can park ideas there to come back later. But another way to kind of set the stage for fun and inclusiveness is to have an icebreaker that really creates connections. It maybe involves some personal storytelling or some kind of an activity to start your session. And there's a lot of cool ideas out there that you can use that we'll probably have in the toolkit for you as well. So that kind of has to do with the emotional or the state of mind to be in. So with that in mind, kind of in that same vein, have fun with this. As we mentioned earlier, SMPS is a volunteer organization. This is a great journey. It's going to be awesome for you guys. PLS is going to be wonderful. The year that's to come is going to be wonderful. So enjoy it, savor it, and make sure that you're rewarding and recognizing and celebrating the success that you have and the goals that you meet. So Does anyone have any other questions?
Holly, this is Mary. There was one question from Gabe Lett, and I did respond because I wanted to clarify his question. But Gabe, if you're on the phone, I did unmute you if you wanted to go ahead and ask it. And just to introduce Gabe, they are in the process of charting a brand new chapter, Ozarks chapter, which is in southwest Missouri and northwest Arkansas, that area there. So we're very excited to have Gabe on the call. But I think he had a question about timing of how long the meeting should be. Gabe?
Yeah, thanks. I was wanting to know, as a chapter startup, since we're starting green, how long should we plan for our strategic planning session to be?
And if you mean timing of, I'm sorry, go ahead, Holly.
Oh, no, go ahead, Mary. You clarify.
I just was thinking, just to clarify, is if you mean when to have it, the time of year, or how long the actual day the session should be.
No, I'm sorry, like the amount of time, like hours, should it be a day? What should we plan for since we're starting up and have a lot to discuss?
Hi, Gabe. It's good to hear. It's good to hear your voice, and congratulations on the new chapter that's developing. That's really awesome.
Thank you.
I think that when you said you have a lot to discuss and there's a lot of things to do, that kind of makes me think that it does need to be a longer session. A lot of times it depends on how much homework you do kind of ahead of time, and you can kind of decentralize a few of the tasks and discussions, but there's definitely value in having that collaborative environment. So just kind of maybe start outlining, and the toolkit will definitely be helpful with this, but outlining kind of the steps and goals that you have for that day, and then just kind of saying, okay, and we can also help with that in saying how long, each step might take, and kind of budgeting the time of day. But Mary and Tina, do you have thoughts on that, or?
I just going off of what some of the planning sessions we've had this year, and just even though they weren't startup chapters, it may have been many years since they've done a strategic planning session, so there was a lot to talk about. Typically, 3 to 4 hours, I think, is like a half day is reasonable. If you do something, before and after you consider a lunch, and maybe a few fun exercises, it could take all day. If you can get your board members to commit to that, that might be worth it. But most will start around lunchtime, provide a lunch, and then work into the afternoon, and then following the meeting later on, like we're looking at right here, is to celebrate, because a lot of times it's you're ready by 5 o'clock to go ahead and enjoy some fun. But I think, Tina, if that's about the time frame, I would say at least a full day if you're considering lunch and other activities.
Yeah, I think you're right, because even with other startups that we worked with, and I can even remember, Andrew, you're in the call when we were working with Long Island, it was probably about a good day event, because there's a lot of work and a lot of discussion that needs to be had. You're new as a team and you're talking about things. I think, though, that what's really important, and Gabe, we can work with you on this, and as PLS approaches, we'll have a lot more information. But I think one of the most important things is making sure that you have a very good outline of what you want to accomplish. You know exactly who's going to be there, and you have a good sense of the goals toward the end of it, and then that'll kind of help you gauge how much time you need to allocate for all of those different topics. And we can work with you on that too as you're developing a strategic planning and agenda. If you need a facilitator, all of those different things, we'll work with you and kind of guide you on that. But I think Mary is correct. I think you should really, for the first time out, plan to spend like maybe 9 to 4 o'clock with lunch in between, really working and hashing these things out, and then find time to celebrate a little bit later.
That's
and
great.
Quick,
thank you.
Before we get off, I just had somebody just send a message. Her name's Lynn de Placido, and she's with the Kansas City chapter, and she sent a message saying that she's willing to help you, Gabe, with kickstarting the new chapter. If you have any questions about your planning as well, that they successfully had a spin-off, the Wichita chapter a few years ago. So I'll put you in contact with Lynn. So that would be great. Thank you, Gabe, for your question. And
thank you.
Very good.
Awesome. Well, and if anybody has any other questions and you want to submit them later, we can answer additional questions after the call. But thank you, everyone. And again, special shout out and thanks to Stacey for what her task force is doing with the toolkit. Something really cool for you guys. And I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Andrew Weinberg, who's going to chat with you guys more about recruiting volunteers.
And so I'm going to just apologize up front and say if you hear me hemming and coughing, I am fighting a cold, so I'm going to do my best. So I mentioned earlier that I've been referred to as the poster child for SMPS. I'm also referred to often as a recruitaholic, which I'm in counseling for. So recruiting is actually part of my conversation. You know, it's just naturally there, and you know, they almost kind of start to shy away from me just because, you know, that's going to be top of mind for me. But really, recruiting needs to be top of mind for all the leadership in your chapter, and certainly all the folks who are involved in recruiting members and recruiting volunteers. If you have a member committee like that, without question, recruiting volunteers ties in very closely with membership and retention. And I know that we're going to cover membership much more detailed on the next webinar, but I just wanted to mention that because a lot of the things that we talk about today are going to be, they tie in with both recruiting volunteers and also with recruiting members. So the next bunch of slides are going to cover a series of, I guess, some do's and don'ts, what works and what doesn't work. Some of this is going to be obvious. It serves as a good reminder. Some of them are just, you know, food for thought, things to think about. Let's just jump right into the first one. What doesn't work? General announcements. What you want to do is you want to make it personal. Having one-on-one conversations, either at an event or on a phone call, or you go to coffee with someone or you go to lunch with someone, and you really get to know what those folks are interested in, what's important to them, what they might see themselves doing as a volunteer. When you have that one-on-one conversation and you ask them directly one-on-one, you're going to get a much more favorable response than when you do a general announcement, say at a, if you're doing one of your events and you're doing it during your opening announcements and you say, you know, we're recruiting for volunteers and, you know, it's going to be a great experience, you're going to gain skills. You're not going to get the response that you hope for. The one-on-one is definitely a much better approach. Next. Okay, number two, what doesn't work? Going it alone. And again, this may sound obvious, but recruiting is definitely not a one-person responsibility. It's not the responsibility only of your chapter president. It's not just your director of membership. It is all your board members. It's everyone who's involved in your membership committee. There's actually some chapters out there that have an outreach committee. So it's important to just keep that in mind that you know, it's a group effort, it's a team approach, and it's a multi-pronged approach. So you come at it from different angles and different perspectives. Next. Recruiting long-term versus short-term commitments. So people are going to shy away from being requested to take on something that is long-term. If they're being approached to, you know, stay on membership for 2 or 3 years, or to take on this one particular task that's going to last a whole year or even just a few months, it's much better, especially with newer volunteers, to approach them with short-term commitments, easier tasks, quick, simple tasks. They're much less daunting and much more likely to get them involved. And having those short-term tasks, it gives them an opportunity to have that sense of accomplishment and achievement. And so that way they are encouraged to get involved even more. One thing I also suggest is that you mix them up. So if you're giving multiple tasks, you know, over a period of time to a volunteer, when I say mix it up, I mean give them things that are in their comfort zone. Let's say they're a graphic artist or they do PR for their firm, and you know, those are things that they can get involved with initially, and then, you know, help them stretch out a little bit and, you know, go out of their comfort zone and maybe get them involved in putting together a client panel program or helping to raise funds and sponsorship. There's so many different things that they could be doing. It's good to mix it up. Next. Assume that no means never. So you're having a conversation with someone and they're telling you, well, I'm just not able to volunteer anytime right now. I'm way too busy at work. I have way too much going on in my life. And that's fine. I mean, that's understandable. It's very possible. You know, those of us who are, you know, the volunteers that are very active in our chapters, you know, we're busy too, and we kind of fit it in. But we already drank the potion. We already have the passion. They don't necessarily have that yet. So you go back to these guys and you say, well, is it okay if I ask you again in 3 months? Can I ask you again in 6 months? And undoubtedly the answer is going to be sure. You know, I mean, things change. Circumstances change. Availability changes. So there's definitely an opportunity to come back to that person. So never assume that no means never. Next. The BIC, button chair. So this concept is talking about you have certain positions you need to fill, and you're kind of in a panic, and you're concerned that you're not going to have a full, you know, docket where you're going to have every seat filled, and so you start to, you know, look for just about anybody who you think would be willing, and you just pull them into the chair. Regardless of whether they're the right person. And so the point here is what does work is to be thoughtful of those positions and to really think about what talents are required, what availability is necessary, and who's the right person to bring it in. And you want to make those matches as often as possible. That's your first, that's in volunteering, that's your top goal, your priority is to get the right person doing the right task or filling the right position. There are going to be times when you are stuck or you are in a certain time deadline where you feel that you must have somebody in a spot, and that's okay. I mean, it won't be the optimal situation, and hopefully it won't happen that often. But if it does, make the most of it, and you know, mentor that person, and make sure they really understand what the position requires, and make sure they also know that they're not alone. And that you know, you're going to be right there with them the whole time. And so this just all kinds of thoughts, thinking about making sure that you can make the match as best as possible. Next.
Andrew, can I just add one comment to this one?
Sure, sure.
This is Tina. Really, we can't emphasize, and Mary and I talk to many of our chapters with lots of challenges with volunteers, and many times it's this specific issue where you have someone volunteering in a given position where they really don't have the talent, they don't have the passion, and they're just kind of there because they said okay, or they were pressured to do it, or whatever the circumstance was. But I cannot emphasize enough of how important it is to really have someone in a position who wants to do it. And when we say sometimes an empty seat is best, that truly is a correct statement. If you have someone who is not happy with what they're doing, or they don't have the talent, or they are frustrated, that is going to permeate throughout the entire leadership and volunteer team. And it's going to be a really, you know, kind of frustrating place to work at times. So we will be tapping into this a little bit more during PLS, but I just want to make sure that we put a little bit more emphasis on that and how important it is in really getting people who want to do the given job that they're given. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there, Andrew.
No problem. Thanks, Tina. And if you can go back to that for a second, I did want to bring up one example that actually happened in our chapter in the last week. We had a volunteer who is, you know, a new volunteer, a new chapter member, very excited about getting involved, and, you know, raised her hand immediately to join the communication, actually the PR committee, and started going to meetings, and it ended up not being a match. It wasn't a personality thing. It was a talent and knowledge thing. She was not familiar with how social media works. She was not familiar with the various aspects of the, you know, even just the terminology. I mean, we were basically starting from scratch. Now, you can have those situations where you're going to look to educate someone, but if that person really wants to be an effective participant, then it might and what we did is we actually made a suggestion that she make a switch because she was so enthusiastic and because she was very interested in the networking aspect of her involvement. We got her involved in special events. And I spoke to her last night at our networking event, and she was just thrilled to pieces. She was very happy that we were willing to, to be honest and to suggest being put in a different spot. So, just an example.
Very
Next.
good.
Okay, so this is more along the same lines. Being people-driven doesn't work. Being position-driven does. So, making sure that you are focusing on what the position requires in terms of talent, in terms of availability, in terms of people skills, whatever it is, you want to make sure that the people that you look to fill a spot are really meant for that spot. So being position-driven, I guess letting the position guide you in terms of filling the spot is what we're trying to say here. Next. Okay, so what doesn't work is assume a volunteer knows what work has to be done. So I know that a lot of chapters out there, particularly some of the older ones, have quote-unquote job descriptions for their board members, for their committees. It's important that you have these job descriptions so that the folks that are filling these chairs have an idea of what's expected of them, have an idea of what they're responsible for in a given period of time over the course of the year or what have you. I do want to mention that those of you that have these descriptions should check them probably once a year or once every other year and make sure that they're still current, make sure that they're still applicable. Things change, technology changes, there's various, the industry changes, so you don't want to give someone who's coming into a spot brand new, you don't want to give them a job description that is outdated because then there'll be conflicts and there'll be misunderstandings throughout their year. Next. This is a very important one. What doesn't work? Lack of recognition. Again, seems obvious, but just a good reminder. Make sure that you recognize your volunteers as often as you can through emails, through announcements, through rewards, through celebrations. This is a big deal. It means a lot. It doesn't cost you anything, but it certainly goes a long way. Now, I think that's the last one. Okay, recap. So let me just recap about a couple of things that are important here. They're all important, but just to stress a couple of them. Don't just blanket ask. Ask each person directly. And if you go into that conversation, make sure you know your message. And also, a good suggestion is to tell them your story so that when you're talking with them about what their interests are, when you tell them your story, it makes that connection even stronger, and it also expresses how you got the passion that you have. Be clear on specifics on the position, as we've said, and volunteers are more willing to say yes to a short-term commitment with an end date in sight. Before we go on to the next slide, I did want to ask Mary for a quick moment. We had talked when we were planning this webinar, we had talked about how volunteer status versus membership status, just talking about if there's some kind of transition going on in their career where membership, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, there's been, from time to time, there certainly are volunteers on your board of directors that may go through a life transition. They may be laid off, or they may have certainly lost their job or anything. They may just be changing jobs and are in between. So we just want you to know if that volunteer is at the end of their membership or may need help with their membership renewal, that we certainly can help. We want to make sure that they stay engaged. We don't want them to drop off because of their membership. So we can certainly work out something with an extension or possibly with an installment plan. So it's just a little thing that I want to make sure that you're aware of as a volunteer. If they are actively serving and helping your chapter and they're going through a difficult time, please let us know, and we're happy to work with them.
And just to add one more item on that, throughout throughout PLS and throughout these webinars, and as you get to know the staff, you get to know the committee, and you get to know the board of directors, the one thing that we really want to emphasize is everything that we are doing, we are working knowing the challenges that you have. We want you to be successful, and everything we can do in our power to make you successful, we are going to do. So offering in working with volunteers who are kind of in transition and might need that additional couple of months to make sure that they're still a part of your chapter so your chapter can be successful, that's all a part of it. But these are things that we are dedicated to do for all of you. We want to make sure that you're in the best position to be able to provide the best experience for your members there locally.
Thank you, Mary and Tina. So this next slide is a series of tips and ideas that I wanted to share with you. The first one is consider having a volunteer coordinator position. So this is somebody who would keep track of all those little tasks that need to get done from all your different committees and from all your different types of events. And that person would also keep track of the individuals that you've had these conversations with who are willing to be on a list of sort of like an on-call kind of situation where they can be, you know, if someone is needed at registration or if someone is needed to pass out the handouts at an event or something. This volunteer coordinator position, it could be somebody who's been on your chapter, involved with your chapter for many years and knows everybody and knows everything. Or it could be somebody new who's very enthusiastic, not really sure which direction they want to go yet, so this would be an excellent way for them to really get to know all the different facets of the chapter. So it's just a suggestion. Oh, and by the way, when you have that list of folks that are willing to help a little bit here, help a little bit there, not necessarily join a committee right away, don't wait until you really need them. Actually use it as an excuse. So you can call these guys and say, listen, we need, you know, you didn't really need somebody for registration, but you can use the excuse and say, we needed your help, would you mind? And it actually gets them involved. It gets that foot in the door. It's that first step towards getting involved and understanding the value and the benefits of being involved. Second one, invite a new recruit to a committee meeting. So what I've done in the past, I've done this many times, is instead of asking somebody to join a committee right off the bat, which can seem daunting, which can seem like a very big commitment, I will ask them to sit in on a committee meeting and, you know, just sit in, listen to the conversation, listen to what's being planned, what's being talked about, what are you know, what are the topics being talked about during that, you know, whether it's planning programs or whether it's communications and, you know, planning communications for website, for emails. The point is, they're going to these meetings. There's no commitment right away, but I will tell you, every time that I've done this, the person, without a doubt, leaves that committee meeting with some sort of small task or small role assigned to them, and inevitably they are a member of that committee going forward. So it has worked well for me. The next one, team lunch meetings. I don't know if some of you guys know Jason Vesuvio. He's our current president in the New York chapter. He and I have done several, we call them tag team lunches. So we'll have lunch with either you know, someone who's looking to join the chapter or somebody who has recently joined and is not sure, you know, what to do next. Jason and I, it's just worked really well because we're from two different vantage points. He's the president. I'm on the board of directors. I'm on the membership committee, and just we each think of different things at different times, and we end up filling the gaps and really providing a complete, you know, well-rounded conversation. The other point I'm going to make is that you guys don't know about this yet, but you're going to be taking a whole brain survey, and you're going to learn about that later. But the reason I bring it up is because it teaches you how you think or how you prefer to think and how you look at different aspects. And Jason and I are polar opposites, it turns out. He is much more big thinker, big picture thinker, and I am much more the detail guy. And so it just happens to work out that the two of us kind of play off each other. One more thing about these meetings is that there's a business development aspect to it. So if you have folks who are volunteers in your chapters, I guess in your membership committees or on your board, who are involved in recruiting members or recruiting volunteers, if they are business development professionals for their firms, it's a double function for this. You know, it's a double result. You're not only talking about, you know, the aspects of the chapter and about SMPS, but you're also doing business development. You're learning more about each other's firms. So what you're doing really is you're connecting the dots, right, Holly?
That's right.
And you guys will be learning about connect the dots at PLS. So next. Next, succession plans. So there's two very good reasons to have succession plans. And one is from the side of the chapter, which of course you're ensuring that you have future leadership. But the other side is from the side of the volunteer. You're giving your new volunteers, your younger volunteers, opportunities to move into leadership positions in sort of a safe environment. They're amongst their peers, they're within the SMPS environment, and they can take on these step-by-step leadership roles within each of their committees, and it's more incentive for them because they can bring that skill back to their firms. And so New York is really good about this. We have, for every committee, we have, you know, it's not just the director and then the rest of the committee. There's co-chairs, there's chairs, there's people in charge of different aspects. And so to give them those opportunities to have these leadership roles is really important and a good incentive for volunteering. Next, recognition of new members and volunteers. Enough said. We already talked about that. Next, the board should mingle. Again, very obvious, but not always done. When you're at your events, when you're at your meetings, the board should not hang out together. They should go out there and mingle with the new faces, with the new members. Make sure you guys are out there talking it up. Have a resource listing for small tasks. This was an interesting idea that one of the chapters is doing that I heard of, is that earlier I mentioned that that you would have this collection of small tasks from all your different committees. You put this collection on a paper with lines next to it and you post it at events. And it gives people who are just beginning to get involved with the chapter an opportunity to actually go right ahead and sign up right then and there. You know, when you're in the throes of it, when you're at an event, you know, you're breathing SMPS. So that's a good opportunity to give them a chance to sign up right then and there. And then my last bullet there is the buddy system. And what we've done, and not in a very formal way, but we found that it does work, is that you pair up a long-term member with a new member. Or I keep saying member, but I'm really talking about volunteer. So you get these guys together, they come to events, they're introduced around by the long-term volunteer, and they're made more comfortable. They can understand more about the inner workings of the chapter, and it's just a good way for them to not feel like they're alone. What do I do now? I don't really know anybody, that whole kind of thing. So the buddy system can work really well. That's the end of my tips. I think that's actually the end of my my talk. So I want to thank everybody again for participating today, and you know, we're looking forward to seeing you at PLS. We're going to be talking to you more between now and then. The next two webinars, please don't miss them. I know, Mary, you're going to go to Q&A now?
Yeah, I'm certainly, if we have, I'm looking now, I don't see any hands raised or questions. There's been a few that I've answered, and like Tina said at the beginning, if any of the questions that we receive either during this session, or please email me any questions if you've watched it maybe with your board, or we'll make sure those that weren't able to participate today get the link to this recording. Send us your questions and we'll make sure to compile them together, answer them, and send them back out to you guys so everyone can see the questions. Tina, we just lost your PowerPoint, or maybe that was me. Oh, that was me. Okay, sorry.
Excuse me a little bit.
My mouse, it's okay. My mouse slid down over something. I thought it was you. It's me.
Okay.
It's always me. Anyhow, that's okay. So certainly, if there's any questions at this time, please raise your hand. While Tina's going over the reminders, I will unmute you. But as of right now, we're good to go.
Okay. Well, this is the final slide. We just want to make sure that you have this on your calendar. PLS is April 25th to the 27th in Old Town Alexandria at the Hotel Monaco, which is directly across from the SMPS headquarters. One of the things that we want you to know is that we will have an open house, so you get to see where we work, we get to meet one another, and really just kind of get to know one another a little bit better. So we're really excited to meet all of you. Registration and other program material will be sent out very, very soon. We know we have a lot of people who have been asking about that, and we're working on that right now, so within the next few days. There are 2 more pre-PLS conference webinars. The next one is on February 27th. That is going to focus on membership and education. Then on March 27th, our final pre-conference webinar will be on finance and making the most of PLS. These are both really very important webinars. And one thing that's kind of cool is with the finance and making the most of PLS, we're going to be introducing you to our new controller who we just hired a couple of weeks ago. His name is Antonio Payne, and we are thrilled to have him on board. So you'll get to meet him through the webinar as well. So all of you know, these are all going to be recorded. This one is recorded, and it will be put in the community library for all of you at PLS 2013. So we want to make sure that even for those who weren't able to be on this call today, they can go back and they can go ahead and take a look at it and hear what we've been saying. And they can find the little Ronnie too. So did you find the little Ronnie? I know someone in the little answers said that they saw it. So we just want to make this a little fun. It's kind of, you know, we really can't emphasize how important these sessions are for you, for us, and just really launch PLS the right way. So if you come to us at the end of all of these webinars and you told us where you found that little Ronnie and on what slide, we're going to send you a fun little SMPS prize. So that's it for the end of the program. Mary, any other questions? Since we've,
nope, that's it. We just had one that was asking if the PowerPoint would be made available, and we will be sending the PowerPoint along with a link to this recording so you can share it with your board. And also, Lisa Corcel, as I've unmuted you, you have your hand raised. Lisa? Okay, she must not be able, but she said, who do we report to about the little Ronnie, Tina?
You can report the little Ronnie. We'll give you more information when we send out the next the set of registrations and the next email. But you can send it to either Mary or me, and our email addresses are either tina@smps.org or mary@smps.org. But we'll make sure that you all have that information.
That's it. No
and
more
I think
questions.
that's it. Okay, well, thank you all for participating today. We can't wait to talk to you again next month, and have a great afternoon, everybody.
And thank you, Holly and Andrew, for your presentations. You guys did great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.